For some perspective, we're going to bring in one of the people we consider to be one of Bloomberg's bests in housing in terms of accuracy and his outlook. These record low numbers this morning is what we're trying to put into perspective here. Guy Lebas of Janney Montgomery Scott joins us via phone. Pick your description here, Guy. Shocking. I mean, how do you describe this figure today?
Sure. Good morning, Margaret. I think the word I like to use is absolutely floored. You know, we were looking for something of a decline in home sales, though not nearly this dramatic. And the real story here is, if you look at the last two-month average of home sales, we're talking about 373,000 or so. And that's not the level of home sales you'd expect with the government's tax credit in place for most of that period.
So you point out here that the real weakness that you're seeing is on the west coast of this country. What happened in California?
Sure. Well, the western region doesn't make up a majority of sales, not by any means, but month over month, seasonally adjusted, sales in that region plunged by about 53%, which is a huge, absolutely unprecedented drop. And the story we saw back in 2006 and 07 was that the western region, particularly when it comes to housing markets, was something of a leading indicator. So I think we're kind of tracking that pretty carefully as a headline concern going forward.
So this is the largest ever month-over-month percentage drop here. To extrapolate from this for me here, I mean, we just had Al Brodus on who said, you know, that this is often a very volatile number. There's often some noise in here. Give me some perspective. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. The new home sales is a volatile number. There are a lot of seasonal adjustment factors that come into play. And this time around, we, of course, have the expiration of the government's tax credit that makes things even more complicated.
Yeah, but we knew that was coming. I mean, how well telegraphed can you get?
We did know it was coming, but we don't have any experience with this sort of expiration and the sort of trends that tend to go on around that. So in some respects, the expectations were a little bit more of a guess than they usually are. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you know, the housing markets have proven a substantial part of the U.S. economy.
Talk to me about pricing here as well. People aren't buying, but what's happening? Are we seeing more instability?
Well, I think on the price side of things, we actually have seen a little bit more stability in this time around. In the data for May, it looks like the majority of the sales were kind of the sales declines, the majority of the declines were in mid-priced homes, kind of 150,000 to 300,000 or so.
How significant is that portion of weakness there?
Well, that does represent the bulk or the largest block of home sales, so I think it's very substantial. It's also the sort of group that tends to be a little bit more focused on the home buyer tax credit.
Right.
So I think that's where you're seeing the bulk of that tax credit effect bleed out of the markets, is in the $150,000 to $300,000 new homes.
You know, there have been a lot of people out there raising concerns about some of the foreclosure programs and the efficacy of them, HAMP and the like. I mean, is that adding into some of this that you're seeing here?
Sure. That's a factor that I think is going to affect existing home sales, such as the data that was released yesterday, far more than it is going to affect new home sales. On the flip side, if after a HAMP modified loan, a home buyer re-forecloses or redefaults, well, that represents a big credit spot on their credit record, and will make it challenging in the long run to purchase homes. Mm-hmm. I think in the bigger picture, we got to remember one thing. It's not 2005. You need a job to buy a house these days. And that factor alone, and the fact that unemployment rate remains quite elevated, means that there's, by definition, limited demand in the housing markets.
Yeah, corporations cut another 10,000 jobs just in the month of May alone. The bodies are still being counted here. Thank you very much for your perspective there. Guy Lebas calling in from Janney Montgomery Scott with reaction to this record plunge in new home sales.